in today's session, I'd like to give you some insights into the fundamental concept of the UX strategy of S/4HANA and how Fiori helps us to convert S/4HANA into the intelligent ERP. Then you will understand what are the fundamental principles on how we have designed the user interface for S/4HANA. We will take a close look into some architecture considerations, and a main part of the session will be the new tool sections, where we want to show to you some new tools we have implemented or built to accelerate the implementation of Fiori in S/4HANA. Let me quickly start with a very bold statement. Fiori is the user interface of S/4HANA, the go-to user interface. What does it mean? Basically, it means that customers who don't implement Fiori for S/4HANA and remain with using the GUI as a primary UI will not benefit from the innovations we are delivering with S/4HANA, because basically all new functionality and capabilities in S/4HANA are accessible only via Fiori. Second key message is that if you implement Fiori not in the way it is intended to be implemented, you will face very high implementation costs as well as a bad user experience. And we have seen meanwhile that many customers start with implementing S/4HANA selectively by doing cherry picking of apps, and this exactly leads to this problem that you break the user experience and end up in very high implementation cost. And in the course of this session, I will explain what is the background behind this statement and why you should avoid this. Good. Let me start with a very high-level picture. So the intelligent ERP, that's our ambition for S/4HANA. And intelligence means two sides. On one side, improvements with regards to the processes or intelligent processes. And here we focus very much on getting rid of repetitive tasks. So things like robotic process automation, machine learning, those are things which really help and speed up, help to improve processes and speed up the system. The complementary part to this is the intelligent user experience. So we don't want that the user spends their time in repetitive tasks, the manual order entry or those kind of things. We rather would like to focus them on exception-based management or on insight to action patterns. So the system should help them really to find out what to focus on and then direct them directly to this kind of things. In addition, with the Copilot, we are offering also a digital assistant which helps the users to improve collaboration or to simplify working with the system up to a natural language processing. So why is this relevant? Starting again with the fundamentals, it's important to understand that Fiori is more than Fiori apps, and in particular more than Fiori apps built with SAP UI5. So many customers think Fiori is just Fiori apps, and we get the questions like, did you have or replace GUI transactions by Fiori apps, and is the full functional scope covered with Fiori apps? And the clear answer is no, and it's even not our intent, because Fiori is more than just apps. So let me explain what is Fiori. So basically it starts with Fiori is a design system, and a design system defines some interaction patterns, colors, fonts, action placement, a lot of things, basic design decisions. And this design system is independent of any kind of technology. That's important to understand. So in S/4HANA, we are using SAP UI5 to implement Fiori, but we also use classic transactions, the visual Fiori theme. Other products of SAP implement Fiori with other frameworks like React or with Angular. So Fiori itself is technology agnostic. That's important to understand. But what are now the key ingredients of Fiori for S/4HANA? So the first key ingredient is the Fiori Launchpad. The Fiori Launchpad offers a shell as a single entry point into the Fiori world. and this shell offers some generic services like search, documentation, access, etc. Then for sure we also have Fiori apps. Yeah? Those are apps which are tailored to specific tasks of a user or to specific use case. But we also have a Fiori visual theme, which is a visual, refreshed, consistent visual experience for classic UIs, meaning GUI transactions and WebDumpler application. All of this together is what we name Fiori for S/4HANA. Why is this important? So, as I mentioned, our goal is to build the intelligent ERP. So therefore, our investment focus is rather in doing new stuff, offering new ways of working instead of just doing a replacement of transactions as there has been before. Yeah. So therefore, how does it look like? Yeah? If you just take as an example 3 classical UIs, so GUI transactions, WebDumpler applications, which you know. When we are building Fiori apps, the first thing what we do is we look at roles, because roles, Fiori is a role-based approach. So you need to understand the role of a user, then you also understand what are the use cases of this user. So in this picture here, you see there are different features or use cases used by different users, still in the same transactions. And this is then the starting point for us to start with the decomposition, meaning in some cases, we take some features out of the transactions and move them to different Fiori apps, if these are different use cases. In other cases, we do a recomposition, saying we take features from multiple transactions and move them into one Fiori app, if the use case requires this. In other cases, we say we just simplify and only a very small subset of the functionality will be offered as Fiori, and the rest of the functionality just remains in the GUI transaction. In the long run, our goal is to move more and more of the tasks of a user up to the Fiori apps. Yeah. Nevertheless, the GUI transactions, the WebDumpler applications are still part of the overall functional scope and navigation network. And Fiori apps and the classic UIs have to be used in combination. So as I mentioned, we are targeting for the intelligent ERP. Yeah? So what does it mean? We offer new ways of working, for example, with analytical app, analytical list pages, overview pages, so various different type of UIs which don't have any correspondence to GUI transactions. Yeah? So if you take a look at a sales overview page, you will find nothing similar like this in the old world. So that's depicted here by those kind of white spaces. In our overall Fiori portfolio, around 50% of the Fiori apps we offer are exactly this type of thing, which you didn't have a correspondence to a GUI transaction in the past. Then, as I mentioned, it's a role-based access. We have to ensure that the user can access the full functional scope via a single entry point. So therefore, we tie all of this together, again, for a specific business role. And this tying together defines a navigation network for a user. This navigation network is defined in the so-called Fiori Launchpad content. So that's the combination of all apps relevant for this user with the interlinkage between those apps that you can do forward navigation between those apps. So and here we have then different navigation networks for the different business roles. And as I mentioned, the access point to this whole thing is the Fiori Launchpad. And in the Fiori Launchpad, we then offer some generic services which are independent of individual apps, but helps the user overall to work with the system. Things like search, personalization options, collaboration features, access to documentation, etc. In this sense, the Fiori Launchpad replaces the sub-logon or the sub-GUI. So now after we have taken a look at how does the concept look like, how we have implemented and designed Fiori for S/4HANA, let's take a look on how can you implement it or how should you not implement it. So we have made the experience that some customers start to implement Fiori selectively by doing cherry picking of some individual apps and then taking a look at Fiori apps only, so Fiori UI5 apps. If you do this and offer those apps in a Fiori Launchpad, you end up with 2 entry points for the user. because they do a lot of tasks in GUI and have to log on to SAP GUI. And for some other tasks, they have to log on to the Fiori Launchpad and can perform some tasks in the Fiori Launchpad. And if there are some integrated processes, the user gets a human integrator because he needs to do copy and paste of order numbers, selection criteria from one side to the other just to get consistent results again. That's the reason why I depicted as the very first statement, if you do a selective implementation of Fiori, you end up in a very bad user experience because the user gets 2 entry points. And the other thing is, which you'll later see, you also get quite high implementation costs because basically Fiori apps are not designed to be used individually. So we have a high interrelationship between apps in a navigation network, and if you do them individually, you just break the navigation. You can compare this with introducing the internet without hyperlinks. So if you would assume you have to use the internet and just have to have the address bar, copy paste everything via the address bar, it basically gets unusable. That's the same effect here. Therefore, our recommended approach is to really implement Fiori along the business roles, have the Fiori Launchpad as a single access point. And we have 2 client options for this. One is a browser, or the second client option is the SAP Business Client. But if you do it that way, you will get the access to the full functional scope in the system via Fiori. So this picture we name the pyramid approach because the logic behind this is on the very top we have the single entry point with the Launchpad. In the middle section we see all those insight to action patterns and exception-based handling, so everything that helps the user to find out what to do. And on the lower level, you see then the detailed UIs, being on the left side here Fiori apps, on the right side classical UIs, and all of this is interconnected in a navigation network. We offer those kind of pyramids per business role, because each business role has a different way of working. So therefore, there are different pyramids for purchasers, for accounts payable accounts, for controllers, for sales reps, etc., etc. So out of the box with S4HANA, you get a quite bunch and quite comprehensive list of business roles, which serve as template, as a starting point for your implementation project. For sure, we don't assume that they fit 100% to your needs, but they serve as a starting point to experience Fiori and then do an adaptation of the roles or create your own roles in your implementation project. So let's take a quick look at the system so that you just see how this looks like, what I've just explained. So that's the Fiori Launchpad of the internal sales rep, as we deliver it out of the box. And let me quickly show to you how does this working pattern look like. As an internal sales rep, one of the main tasks is to resolve billing blocks or to resolve any issues in sales orders. And a billing block is one particular thing in this. So we are now on level 1 of this pyramid, and if we go down here to sales order monitoring, there is a Fiori app, sales order fulfillment issues. This pattern is named a analytical list page. Because it starts with some analytics at top. And here you see which issues do we have in orders, or which orders have issues, and 80 orders have issues in the order itself, 64 in delivery. If I drill down, I see here which type of issues exist in orders. So if I just filter here on billing blocks. So those charts, by the way, are configurable, so you can quickly change the chart type if you want to have a different chart type. That's also some coming out of the box in Fiori. And so I filter now to issues with billing blocks, and you see here we have here 4 orders which have a billing block. In the simplest case, I just say let's take 2 of them. I know I can release it. And I just press here, remove billing block. And now, in the background, 2 orders get the billing block resolved. So for such a simple task, I can just perform the task on the second level of the hierarchy. I don't have to go down into the individual orders. But if I want to go down into orders and do a more drill down on what is really the issue, I can simply navigate via forward navigation to the next app. This is the Track Sales Order Details app. You see here the document flow, the different type of objects in the document flow, and we have something which we name as Smart Link. The Smart Link is a dynamic mechanism to show navigation targets for a specific object type. So these are navigation targets for quotations. If I just go here to the order, I see navigation targets for orders. And if I click here, for example, on change sales order, then click. So then we are navigating to the GUI transaction VA02, which is part of this navigation network. And it's, as you have seen, it's seamless integrated. Yeah. If I now just remove manually the building block, so the same what I did in the other example before, and just go back, then you see the order is open. Yeah. So that's one of the examples on how this integrated navigation network works if you implement Fiori correctly. If you implement Fiori not correctly, and for example just take individual apps, yeah, you break and don't implement the forward navigation, this whole thing will not work. Yeah. Just show you a second example. From everywhere you can access the search. If I just search here for any term, so this is domestic, which is part of a customer name. Yeah, you can also just put in an order number or any kind of number. So this is now performing a full text search in the complete ERP or S4HANA system. And you see there are multiple type of objects where this term domestic appears. I know I'm looking for sales orders. And then I can use here the facet filter to find out, for example, which orders are in process. I can do a further drill down, yeah, so the not approved ones, and maybe then directly navigate to this order. Yeah. So those are the things which I've just mentioned, which are part of this pyramid. So after we have taken a look at the strategy and the overall concept, let's take a look at some fundamental architecture considerations. First of all, there are different deployment options. And in contrast to Fiori for ERP, where we recommend to use a separate front-end server as a deployment option, we recommend for Fiori for S4HANA an embedded deployment. The reason is very simple. In Fiori for ERP, the strategy was to keep the ERP system stable, and Fiori was the innovation. So to innovate against a stable backend. This was the strategy for Fiori for ERP. With S4HANA, it's the other way around. In S4HANA, the backend is the innovation driver. All those new capabilities which we've just seen are coming with the backend. We do machine learning in the backend and expose it. And we do analytics in the backend and expose it. So therefore, we have a tight coupling of the product version Fiori for ERP, S4HANA with the backend product version. And to simplify the setup, we recommend, meanwhile, to have an embedded deployment. What is not working, and that's a misconception of many customers, is that you can still continue to use Fiori as a hub, as a single entry point against multiple S4HANA systems. This will not work. Or if you do this, you have a strict version dependency between all connected systems, which means, in fact, that whenever you upgrade one of those components, you have to upgrade all of them. And as is in most cases unrealistic, especially if you have complex landscapes with multiple S4 systems, we don't recommend this. If you want to have a single entry point, a portal in front of multiple S4HANA systems, then the strategy is that we are going to offer a cloud platform portal, a central launchpad, which is then able to connect to multiple systems which are then content provider into this platform. Yeah. So that's the next generation of portal. It is not yet available in this integration scenario, but that's something where we are heavily developing in this direction. So this means, from an implementation perspective, you first implement Fiori for S/4HANA embedded in your backend. If you have 3 backends, you implement it 3 times in 3 backends, and afterwards you will be able to pull the content from those systems and offer a portal where you have a single access point. Second topic is the client strategy. Yeah, the simplest version is you access it, Fiori for S/4HANA via browser. This is what I've just shown in my demo. Yeah, there is a second option, especially for those customers who want to have a local client. You can use the SAP Business Client instead of the SAP Logon. Yeah, because this business client has 3 different connection types. One is a classic SAP GUI connection type, so it feels very similar to a classic GUI, and is an easy way of users to adopt. But there is a new connection type, SAP Fiori Launchpad, and in this connection type there is a combination of Fiori Launchpad and launching Fiori apps, but also using the native GUI, so GUI for Windows, in case you're navigating to a GUI transaction. So how does it look like? Yeah, so that's here the same system. On one side, accessed via a browser. You see here on top there is a browser bar. On the other side, if you use a business client with connection types of Fiori Launchpad, the outer shell is a business client, and in the first tab you see the Fiori Launchpad, so it's running in fact a Chromium browser. And if you would navigate to a GUI transaction, the GUI transaction would open in a separate tab and uses the native local GUI, so the SAP GUI for Windows. Okay, now after we have understood basically some fundamental things, let's take a look at how to implement this whole stuff. Yeah? So especially how to implement the complete navigation network for Fiori. So as I mentioned, if you start implementing Fiori by doing cherry picking of apps, yeah, meaning you go to the apps library, you find some apps you think they are interesting, you do a fit gap analysis, whatever, and then come to the conclusion, okay, I want to implement 50 Fiori apps. And if you start to implement those 50, you will quite fast experience, oh, those 50 don't work. They try to do forward navigation. If I don't implement the corresponding other apps, yeah, I simply get errors, yeah, because the navigation breaks or I cannot do my job. So you find another round of apps you need to implement. From those you find the next layer of implement, etc., etc. So I've made the experience, if you do this, you get very, very high implementation costs because one wave after the other you have to do reconfiguration. And it takes quite a while until a basis team is able to give a configured system to the application team that they can start experiencing Fiori. To overcome this situation, we recommend, meanwhile, a fundamentally different approach. We recommend to start with selecting of business roles and then do the rapid activation of the business roles. This helps you to get very quickly Fiori up and running in a sandbox system. And based on this running system, you can do a fit gap analysis and then start to adapt to your needs. So how does it look like? You do the initial scoping and identify the business roles. Those business roles are the ones which I had just on the list. Then we recommend to set up a sandbox system where you just try it out. So you can take a copy of your productive system, for example. If you did a technical upgrade up front, do the fit gap analysis to experience Fiori, and afterwards adjust the content. If you want to try it out by yourself, in 1 hour we have a hands-on session where you can do it by yourself. So everything I will show to you now is part of this hands-on session. Good. So how do we do this? So let's quickly start with step number 1. Yeah, you do a identification of relevant business roles. So you can do this For example, by going to the apps library. Let me just go, where is... So I think you probably know the apps library. It's the repository of all Fiori apps. If you just select here, for example, you're interested in sales, and if I just go in here and say VA02, then you see all Fiori apps related to VA02, including the GUI transaction itself. Yeah, so there are some lighthouse apps like sales order fulfillment issues. You can even drill down from here to a presentation showing some benefits of those lighthouse apps. But you also can just start selecting some apps, and now we recommend to go to, aggregate mode. There you find the aggregated configuration requirements, and it lists the roles which are required or in which those apps are selected. So if you have a broader scope, you get also more roles. From here, you can export the list of roles directly to an Excel, and this Excel is the thing which we are going to use in the second step. Yeah, so that's a very simple list of roles. You can do, I do now a copy paste of the role name. And now go to the second step, the rapid activation of this role internal sales rep. So for this, we offer some new task lists. So they have been released half a year ago. So I just go to the backend system. There is the so-called task manager for technical configuration. So that's a generic framework for task lists. And we have two new task lists. The first one is SAP Fiori Foundation S4. This is a task list which activates the Fiori Launchpad for S4HANA. So it's a one-time activity to activate this. Afterwards, you have the role for the admin and the role for the end user, yeah, and have a running Launchpad. So I did this upfront, but I want to activate now the content, yeah, and this task list is very simple. So in the first step, I can just enter the list of business roles I want to activate. For example, this is now the copy-paste part, what I did from the apps library. Yeah? So I can enter an arbitrary number here. Or if I don't want to do it that way, I can manually select those roles which I'm interested in. So 410 roles are delivered with S4HANA 1809 FPS2. So if I just search here for sales, so you see the one I've uploaded in the first step is already selected. I can in addition also select, the sales manager. So this was step number one. I did the scoping. Now, second thing is I can define a prefix for my custom role, because we want to copy the SAP role into the customer namespace and generate custom roles out of it. And in this task list, I can also say I want to generate a test user, because the purpose of this task list is to get as fast as possible a up and running system with Fiori. So then I just assign the generic role, which gives a generic access rights to the user. This is the role generated by this first task list, which I didn't perform here. And basically, we are done with input. So I ask now this task list to activate the internal sales rep as well as the sales manager. So what happens now? You see here the progress indicator down there. See, the system determines for those roles which catalogs, so Fiori Launchpad catalogs, are contained in those roles. It determines which apps belong to those catalogs. Then for each of the apps, it determines what are the OData services required, what are the ACF nodes required for those. It activates the ICF nodes, it activates the OData services. After everything is activated, it copies over the SAP role, which doesn't have these authorizations, into the customer namespace, in this case here with the prefix T. So it generates from an SAP role a T role, so to say, and assigns all the authorizations and generates a default authorization profile with star authorizations. And at the end, it generates a test user, because I asked in this optional step to also get a test user. So all of this is done now, and just to see that you believe me, so I just go to user management, enter the ID, the generated ID of this user. So this number is just generated to get unique IDs. So this is the generated user. It uses the generated role with prefix T plus the generic Fiori Foundation user. If I navigate to the role, so forward navigation to PFCG, then you see the menu, and these are groups and catalogs, so Fiori Launchpad content. And if you look into the group, the catalog, sales order processing, the basis consultants, if you know what I show here, so this is the corresponding authorizations for the OData service, for the gateway part as well as the backend part. And as this is a hybrid role or catalog, it also contains the corresponding GUI transactions, which are required to enable the forward navigation, which I've just shown. So let's just do the test. Go back to the system, sign out with this user, sign in with the new one, come on, which we have just generated. Here we are. We have an up and running Fiori Launchpad, and I could just do the same again what I just did some minutes back. Starts a sales order fulfillment transaction. So I don't do the demo again, it's exactly the same as before. So now we did the second step to activate Fiori. So this is now the basis for your teams to do a fit gap analysis. For sure they will identify this roles as defined by SAP don't fit exactly to the way we are working in our company. It might be that the sales rep is too broad, some things need to be different, split it up. So the next step is then to adjust the content to your needs. For this, we have a brand new tool out, which is the Fiori Launchpad Content Manager, which simplifies the mass maintenance of Fiori Launchpad content. So that's a complementary, so we did this already, ready for test. Now we do the content manager. That's a complementary tool to the other tools which we already have, like the up descriptor mass maintenance to define up descriptors for backend transactions. Then we have the Fiori Launchpad Designer, which is a quite old tool, which you still need to use if you want to define your own tiles and target mappings, and if you want to maintain groups. But this tool is not really good if you want to do mass maintenance, and this mass operations you can do with the Fiori Launchpad Content Manager. So let's just do this. So it offers two views. It offers a catalog view, where you see on the top the catalogs, and on the bottom you see the apps contained in the catalogs as combined as tile target mapping combinations. And it offers a second view, which is a kind of app view, where you see on top the apps, and at the bottom you see the where used list, so where are they contained in in catalogs. So let's quickly jump to the system and just show this. I'm now here. I just press back. There are two versions of the content manager, depending on the two layers, so cross-client or client-independent content and client-specific content. So let's just open the client-specific version. So it now reads the complete Launchpad content from the system. So, and now you see here, this is a catalog view and there is a tile target mapping view. The benefit compared to the FLPD is that in this tool, the couples of or pairs of tiles and target mappings are already resolved. Yeah? So you see a tile and the corresponding target mapping directly in one line, and not as in FLPD in two entities, and you have to find by yourself the pairs. So let's do a quick thing. So you can search here. It's a full text search. Yeah, for example, I'm looking for a quotation catalog, but I should type it correctly, then I have also a chance to find it. So there is a catalog for quotation processing. This is one of the catalogs used by the internal sales rep. So I can quickly create now a copy of this catalog, saying I want to have now a Z version of this catalog, that is KB. So now the complete content is copied over, and you see as this standard content was defined by SAP in a conf layer, it is read-only here in this layer, in the customizing layer, but my copy, which I just created, is not read-only, so I can start to manipulate this. Yeah? So I could remove now simply some apps. Yeah, let's just remove this one here. Remove tile target mappings. Or I can also say I want to add now something. Yeah. So I'm adding now a tile target mapping. Maybe let's just scroll to the right, make it a little bit smaller, that you see that you have here all the information. Yeah. So all tile target mapping combinations, the semantic object action. You see which type of app is this, which app is launched, the Fiori ID. So you could search for a Fiori ID, for example. But we are now searching for a, what was it, VA26. Collective processing for quotations, because this app is missing in my catalog. I could assign it here, yeah, but I just want to show, I don't do it now. I just want to show you the other view. If I do the same thing here, VA26. So this is now the tile target mapping view. Sorry, this one I can close. I don't need it any longer. Yeah, you see here this tile target mapping. This app is only contained in a technical catalog. Yeah. So therefore, I want to add it to a catalog. So just from the other side, and now I take SKB. This is my custom catalog I've just generated. Add tile target mapping reference. Now you see this catalog is added here. And if I go back to the catalog view, I also see this new app contained in this catalog. So we have defined and adjusted now the Launchpad content. Next thing is we just want to get it into our role. So just open the role again, the role maintenance. Let's just add here the catalog. Yeah. So this was my ZSKB quotation catalog. So I want to add this. And now again, the system determines the same what happened during the task list generation. It determines which apps are belonging to this catalog. Yeah, so there are some Fiori apps and some GUI transactions. Here is my new one. Yeah. Then let's, in addition, just remove the SAP catalog. It was this one. We don't need this any longer because this is the one we have adjusted. So if I save now, I get a notification that I need to also regenerate my authorizations because I have now a new transaction in. So I can simply regenerate the authorizations. I'm green again. And now let's see whether it works. Yeah. So just going back, refreshing. So as we didn't do anything with regards to groups, we still don't see it here in a group, but I can go to the App Finder. In the App Finder, I see the catalogs. And there should be now this new quotation processing catalog. And here we are. That's my app. Yeah, just added to the content. So in the same manner, I could remove some catalogs, I could remove some groups and split the roles into different roles. So basically, that's the way how, with this new content manager, you are able to adjust the content to your needs much, much more efficiently as you could do it with the Fiori Launchpad Designer. Yeah. So the task list for the rapid activation as well as the content manager were delivered via support packages. So if you install the latest support packages, you get those tools even for older releases like 17.09 or 18.09. Yeah. Short outlook. With 19.09, we released already a further improvements of this content manager. So the version I've demonstrated here just contained target mappings and catalogs. The new version also has a tab with roles. There you see which roles you have and which catalogs are assigned to roles, as well as an indicator of the activation status so that you can really see which apps are activated or which are not activated. And there is also a new task list to run the content activation for custom catalog or custom roles as well. So the same what this rapid activation does in a large system, you can do this also with a custom role. So if I would like to regenerate my T role, you could do it with this task list. So it is released for 19.09 and it will be downported with the next support package and made available with the support package coming end of October for 17.09 and 18.09 systems. Good. With this, I'm basically done. So let me wrap up my session. So S4HANA is the go-to user interface, or Fiori is the go-to user interface for S4HANA. Yeah, so if you stay with GUI as a primary UI, you will not benefit from any innovations in S4HANA. Therefore, it's important to put implementation of Fiori on your roadmap. I think it's still okay to say if you do it in 2 steps, your conversion to S4HANA, first a technical migration and then a business process adaptation, but you have to be part of the second phase. Otherwise, it will be really hard to show a benefit in S4HANA. Don't do the cherry picking of apps on a selective implementation of apps. As you have seen, hopefully, and understood from my session, the apps are not designed to be used individually, and this will lead to very high implementation costs and bad user experience due to the 2 entry points, but rather implement Fiori along business roles. You can take our roles as a starting point, do the rapid activation, and use this for effect-based fit gap analysis. And then you can roll out role by role. So you don't have to do a big bang, but if you want to do it phase-wise, then start, for example, in finance with some finance roles. Not all at once, you can do it really role by role, so that one user just have either GUI or the Fiori Launchpad as the access point. And the task list for rapid activation, as well as the Fiori Launchpad Content Manager, help really to gets the implementation costs under control and simplifies significantly the implementation. By this I'm done. You find here a lot of additional sources, information sources for multiple target groups.